There is a certain kind of person who walks into a room and almost immediately feels that something is wrong. No one is shouting. No one is causing trouble. And on the outside, the atmosphere still seems normal. But inside them, their mind has already begun scanning every detail. An avoiding glance, a slightly forced smile, a sentence that sounds polite but carries a strange, fake energy that is hard to explain. To others, these are just tiny moments. But to them, every detail feels like a signal that needs to be decoded. Many people call this ability, sensitivity, strong intuition, or even a gift. But the truth is, when awareness becomes too sharp and has no off switch, it can quietly turn into a psychological trap. They do not just live in the moment. They take that moment home, take it apart, analyze it, and replay it in their mind again and again. A small silence can turn into dozens of theories. A short message can make them wonder what they did wrong. And because they see too many layers of meaning behind everything, they often feel more exhausted than others imagine. This is where the story of their psychology truly begins. If you always feel like you notice more than other people, it does not necessarily mean you are overthinking. In psychology, this tendency usually comes from two different causes. The first group consists of people who are naturally born with a more sensitive nervous system. They easily notice sounds, light, facial expressions, tones of voice, and even the smallest changes in their surroundings. Because they process information more deeply, they are also more likely to become overwhelmed by stimuli that most people barely notice. The second group, however, develops this heightened awareness through past experiences. When a child grows up in a stressful environment where a parent's emotions are unpredictable or there is constant insecurity, the brain learns to watch for every possible sign in order to stay safe. Over time, constantly scanning the environment becomes an unconscious habit. Even in adulthood, long after the danger has passed, the nervous system continues to operate as if something bad is always about to happen. As a result, they can quickly sense the atmosphere in a room, notice subtle emotional shifts in others, and constantly anticipate negative outcomes. The important thing to understand is that this is not a sign of weakness or something strange. It is the result of the brain adapting to help them survive, even if that survival mechanism is no longer suited to their present life. Imagine a child growing up in a home where the adults' moods change as unpredictably as the weather. The morning may be peaceful, but by evening the house is filled with tension. A slammed door, a deep sigh, a cold look, or even the sound of footsteps in the hallway is enough to put the child on high alert. They learn to read the atmosphere before they ever learn how to live carefree. They know when to speak, when to stay silent, when to smile to calm the situation, and when to disappear to avoid someone's anger. No one teaches them these skills. Their nervous system builds its own survival radar, constantly trying to predict danger before it happens. The problem is that when this child grows up, the radar does not simply switch off. They enter work, love, friendships, and adult relationships, carrying the same old habit of observing, anticipating, preparing, and protecting themselves. So, if you always notice the smallest change in someone's voice or facial expression, it may not mean there is something wrong with you. It may simply mean you had to learn how to survive far too early. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and join us for more insights into the psychology behind human behavior. The clearest sign of someone who is overly aware is that they rarely live fully in the present moment. In every conversation, their mind is quietly working like an analysis machine. When someone says something, they do not just hear the words. They also notice the tone of voice, the speed of speech, the pauses between sentences, and every expression on the person's face. If a coworker sends a message saying, "Can you come see me later?" most people would see it as a normal conversation. But for them, a flood of questions immediately appears. Did I do something wrong? Are they unhappy with me? Did I miss something? Within minutes, their mind has already created dozens of different scenarios. The important thing is that this analysis does not only happen when there is a problem, even a compliment, a nod, or a brief glance can become something they think about for hours. They constantly search for hidden meaning behind every small detail, as if every action carries a secret message. This habit leaves their brain with almost no chance to rest. Even after spending the entire day sitting in an office, they can feel completely exhausted because most of their energy has been consumed by the endless conversations taking place inside their own mind. People who are overly aware do not just analyze others, they also spend an enormous amount of time observing themselves. Every emotion they experience immediately becomes something to evaluate. When they feel sad, they do not simply feel the sadness. They begin asking themselves why they feel that way, whether the emotion is reasonable or if they are overreacting. Even when they are happy, they rarely enjoy the moment completely. Part of their mind remains outside the experience, watching to see if they are laughing too loudly, talking too much, or behaving in a way that others might find strange. They are like an actor performing on stage while constantly looking at a monitor to examine every movement. This endless self-observation gradually robs them of their sense of spontaneity. Instead of fully experiencing life, they spend much of their energy judging how they are experiencing it. Over time, this can lead to emotional exhaustion, low self-confidence, and a constant fear of making mistakes in even the most ordinary situations. They are not lacking in ability or intelligence, but the constant analytical voice inside their mind makes everything feel more difficult than it needs to be. If you have ever noticed yourself constantly examining your own thoughts and behavior in this way, share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else realize that they are not alone. As your ability to observe becomes sharper, you begin noticing things that most people never pay attention to. A compliment no longer feels like just a compliment. Even an unexpected gift can make you wonder if the other person is expecting something in return. When someone apologizes, you do not just listen to their words. You carefully study their eyes, tone of voice, and attitude to decide whether they are truly sincere. Over time, you realize that people do not always say what they really think, and not every act of kindness comes without conditions. This awareness helps you see life more realistically, but it also takes away some of the innocence you once had in your relationships. You become more cautious before trusting others, more reserved before opening up, and always keep a part of yourself at a safe distance in case you get hurt. The unfortunate part is that these assumptions are not always correct. Sometimes a person is simply busy, tired, or having a difficult day, yet your mind creates an entire story behind their behavior. Little by little, trying to read people more than necessary makes it harder to enjoy the simple things, a casual conversation, a kind word of encouragement, or a genuine friendship. It is not because the world has become more frightening, but because you have grown used to seeing everything through too many layers of doubt. One of the most noticeable traits of people with heightened awareness is their deep sense of empathy. They do not just understand how others feel. They unconsciously absorb those emotions as if they were their own. When they walk into a room, they can sense tension even before anyone says a word. Simply seeing a friend feeling sad or anxious is often enough to make their own mood become heavier. After listening to someone talk about a breakup, work stress, or a family crisis, they may keep thinking about that story for days. Because they are so in tune with other people's emotions, they are often the ones who know how to listen, choose comforting words, and make others feel truly understood. That is why people naturally turn to them whenever they need someone to talk to. However, very few people realize that the one who is always listening can also become exhausted. They end up carrying the emotional weight of countless others while rarely having the chance to release the burden of their own feelings. Without healthy emotional boundaries, what begins as a gift of empathy can gradually become a constant drain on their energy. If you have ever felt like you absorb other people's emotions too deeply, be sure to like this video to support the channel and join us for more fascinating psychology topics in future videos. Excessive awareness does not exist only in your thoughts. It also has a direct impact on your body. People with heightened sensitivity tend to notice even the smallest physical changes within themselves. A slightly faster heartbeat after a cup of coffee, heavier breathing after climbing a flight of stairs, or a mild feeling of tightness in the chest is enough to catch their attention. What makes this especially challenging is that their brain does not simply register these sensations. It quickly interprets them as signs of danger. A small increase in heart rate may be mistaken for the beginning of a panic attack. A normal feeling of restlessness may be seen as a symptom of something seriously wrong. The more they worry, the more stress hormones their body releases, making the physical sensations even stronger. Their brain then treats those reactions as proof that something terrible is truly about to happen. This creates a cycle of anxiety that feeds itself over and over again. Over time, they begin living with the feeling that they must constantly stay alert, not only to the outside world, but also to every signal coming from their own body. Even when there is no real threat, their nervous system continues to behave as if it is preparing for an emergency. It is this constant state of vigilance that leaves them feeling exhausted, unable to relax, and unable to fully enjoy the peaceful moments in life. After spending years constantly observing and analyzing everything around them, many people with heightened awareness gradually develop the belief that if they can predict every possible outcome, they can avoid getting hurt. As a result, their mind never stops running through endless what-if scenarios. What if that person changes? What if my job falls apart? What if all my plans fail? What will I do then? They try to prepare for every worst-case scenario, hoping they will never be caught off guard when something goes wrong. But the more they try to control the future, the more they lose touch with the present. Instead of focusing on what is happening right now, they spend much of their life living in situations that have never actually happened. This often leads to analysis paralysis, where every decision is delayed by too many possibilities, too many worries, and too many backup plans. Even the simplest choices become difficult because they are always searching for the perfect answer. In the end, life begins to feel less like a journey to be experienced and more like a high-risk project that must be carefully managed. The irony is that the harder they try to protect themselves from pain, the more stressed and exhausted they become. Their constant need to control everything gradually turns the gift of awareness into a mental burden that is incredibly difficult to let go of. At first glance, having sharp observation skills and the ability to think deeply seems like a great advantage. And in many ways, it is. People with heightened awareness often make thoughtful decisions, understand others easily, and rarely act impulsively. But every gift comes with a price. When the brain never stops analyzing, they gradually lose the ability to enjoy life's simple moments. A casual gathering with friends is no longer just a time to relax. It becomes a series of questions about people's attitudes, facial expressions, and hidden intentions. A compliment no longer brings pure happiness because they continue wondering whether there is another meaning behind it. Even when everything is going well, their mind is quietly preparing for the worst-case scenario. Over time, they stop living in the present and begin living in imagined futures or endless analyses of the past. As a result, they often feel exhausted even when their outward life seems perfectly normal. What is even more unfortunate is that they frequently blame themselves, believing they are too weak or too complicated, when the real reason is that they have been carrying far more than they were ever meant to carry. Deep awareness becomes a true gift only when it is balanced with the ability to let go. Without that balance, it slowly turns into an invisible burden, stealing the peace they have been searching for all along. The most important thing people with heightened awareness need to understand is that they do not have to become more carefree. The ability to observe deeply is not the problem. The real problem is that they carry everything they notice as if it were their own burden. The first step toward breaking this cycle is accepting that not every thought reflects reality. Someone who replies to your message late may simply be busy. A quiet coworker may just be tired. Not every moment of silence is a sign of rejection or disapproval. The next step is learning to let emotions arise without immediately analyzing or resisting them. When anxiety appears, instead of constantly searching for a reason, try observing it like a cloud drifting across the sky and allow it to pass on its own. Finally, remember that not everything you notice is your responsibility. You can recognize another person's pain without becoming the one who has to heal them. You can see that a relationship is struggling without feeling obligated to fix it. Once you learn to separate what belongs to you from what belongs to others, your awareness will no longer feel like a burden. Instead, it will become a source of strength that allows you to understand life more deeply while still protecting your own peace of mind. If you see yourself in what we have shared today, remember that there is nothing strange or weak about you. You simply feel more deeply, think more carefully, and notice things that most people overlook. That can be a remarkable gift, as long as you learn how to use it wisely. You do not need to stop observing the world, and you do not have to force yourself to become indifferent just to make life easier. What you truly need is to know when to pause, when to let go, and when to allow things to simply be as they are. Life becomes much lighter when you realize that not every emotion needs an explanation, not every problem requires you to solve it, and not every person's pain is your responsibility to carry. When you learn to set healthy boundaries around your thoughts and emotions, you can keep your sensitivity without allowing it to drain your energy. Let your awareness become a light that guides your path, not a cage that traps your mind. If this video has helped you understand yourself better or made you feel truly seen, subscribe to the channel today. Every week, we share new videos on psychology, behavioral science, and personal growth to help you understand how the mind works, so you can live with greater peace, confidence, and happiness every day.